Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's been a while since I made a video. Kind of coming out of nowhere with this one, but I've been pretty excited for Alone in the Dark. I haven't played any of the other Alone in the Dark games. It's just I saw the trailer for the latest one and figured, you know what, I'm gonna check this out. I know because it's published by THQ Nordic and developed by a studio I've not heard of before. It kind of had like a double A vibe about it, so that's kind of what I was expecting. And I know that it's kind of like a reboot or a remake, vaguely. I'm not sure of the ins and outs of that exactly, but I'm just a huge fan of detective psychological horror stories. So when I saw the trailer for this, it seemed right up my alley. At the time of recording this, I'm maybe about 4 hours into the game, so these are really just my impressions based on what I've played. And I've seen a lot of reviews out there that don't make sense to me. There's a lot of comparisons, and the way I always did reviews when I was making videos in the past or writing for LogNet was to review what's in front of you. Outside of one time that I wish I could take back, I didn't do that. It was for my Last of Us Part 1 remake, whatever, review, where I compared it to the original game and used that to critique it. And I kind of look back at that as like a flaw that I made when reviewing that game. Typically, I look at games as what's presented in front of me, and I take into consideration the budget and scope of that project. Starting with the story, Emily Hartwood receives a concerning letter from her uncle Jeremy Hartwood stating that the people he lives with might be conspiring in a cult. Emily hires a private investigator, Edward Carnby, to accompany her in this wellness check. Really, the opening scene kind of really set a cadence for me where I was like, wow, where's this game going to go and what's this really going to explore and dive into? And so I was like immediately like, okay, like this is going to be cool. I'm in for the ride. And then as soon as we show up to the house, Derceto, you show up and there's not really a whole lot of people. Like at first there's like nobody there. And then what I would assume a lot of people are thinking of as being like really jarring, like you enter through a doorway and then there are immediately all these people or just like people around. And all of a sudden it seems like there's a lot more life in this house than previously conveyed. And so I immediately was like, ooh, like that felt a little weird. Like I'm a little unnerved by how quick all these, like I didn't hear a noise and all of a sudden there's all these people around. And my first inclination was that was jarring. Like, I don't know if they set that up right, but then the more I played the game, the more I realized I think that this is what this game is going for with its story and just kind of like keeping you on your toes and making you feel uneasy. Like there's this very disconcerting energy about this game, and that I really enjoy. I personally chose to play as Emily instead of Edward. I'm looking at it kind of like it feels like this story is more centered around Emily. So I wanted my first playthrough to be about her experiences in the house, but I can already tell based on how this game is playing out that I'm going to want to play it twice because you get separated from one another. And the whole time I'm playing this, I'm like, what is Edward doing right now? And so that's really cool. And that I feel like there's some good replayability value to this game. And I'm interested to see how interactions with characters and everything differ between the two. One, the acting. I know that like David Harbour, like everybody knows David Harbour because everybody's seen Stranger Things and everything. However, the acting in this game, and particularly the voice acting in the clues you pick up, I've never played a game that had clues or like pickups, like artifacts or things you find around that have like audio logs or text based things to read about them. Be one voice acted and then voice acted incredibly well, where it's almost like at the time this document or this clue came to be, it's like a snapshot of the sound or like the audio that was happening in that moment, which is really cool. Like you'll hear lines of dialogue from like someone else there talking, but it's not scripted. And I don't know if that's just like, I have seen a couple of typos based on what was said and what was written out in text. So I don't know if they just didn't go back and add that, but I think it's really cool, to be totally honest. The like I kind of alluded to earlier, the subjects that this game seems to be exploring. Um, like I hope that these things aren't just being introduced and then there's not something to tie it up. And I feel like there's no way that they could be exploring what it seems like they're exploring without kind of coming to some conclusion with that. And really, what I wonder is how far are they going to take it, and that's really interesting to me. And so, from a story perspective, I think the story really is this game's strong suit. And if you're into like a detective noir psychological horror slow burn story that's really involved and has you digging around, I think you'll really enjoy this. But to move on to gameplay, using clues to solve puzzles is really satisfying. That's usually something that I don't take to. Like, I know that when I played Alan Wake 2, and I'm not trying to compare the two, I found myself kind of solving things relatively easily, but with this game, it seemed like the puzzles were a little bit more. Like I would have to like try a little bit more. So these puzzles are a little bit more involved than what I'm used to, but they're not so involved or so complicated that I'm not getting it. Like I haven't had to look up anything. I've been tempted to, and there's even been like there'll be padlocks that have like a set of like three numbers, not in this game three numbers, but they'll have like three symbols, and somewhere there were clues that would kind of give you the idea of what you need to put there, but I didn't do that. I literally just like cheesed it until it worked, and I've done that twice so far. Where I would imagine the puzzles are, or the clues are out there to do it, but specific to those style of puzzles, I have cracked those locks probably before I was supposed to just by cheesing it. But there have been times where like I was flipping through. There's a book that's like Jeremy's book that kind of has clues. There's like multiple pages. I think there's like 6 or 7 pages in it, and I've like flipped through that and then encountered things later where I was like, oh man, this isn't Jeremy's book. And so I went back and saw it and was able to put things together. And so that side of the gameplay is really cool. Probably where this game's gameplay falls short is the like gunplay and the combat, I guess. Yeah, it's, and you know, and I'm not sure if like I'm not sure how deep it is, you know, because I'm willing to afford the benefit of the doubt for like artistic choices or stylistic choices. And, you know, this Emily character, am I supposed to assume she's a master marksman, or that she's just a woman that's checking up on her relative, but is also, because they're related, knows that there's something else afoot, which is my suspicion. I have like some context clues that give me that impression, but you know, is she just checking up and brought a weapon with her because she felt like she probably should, but doesn't really know how to handle it appropriately, and that's why it feels kind of stiff, and the recoil seems so intense. Because there have been times where I'm like in a combat situation and it, you know, I've got an enemy coming at me and they're getting really close and I don't feel like I have the room to back up, and I'm trying to move, but I'm not like an athletic person. I think Emily's wearing like, I don't think she's wearing a dress, but she's wearing like explorer boots and stuff, and just but I don't know if they have a heel on them or what, but it's like it makes me wonder if there's going to be a difference between the gameplay side of things as playing as Emily and playing as Edward, who might have more experience with a firearm. Like, does the gameplay feel like is the recoil less, or is the motion sway less when you're playing as Edward? That I don't know, but I'm trying to, you know, give the benefit of the doubt of like, okay, maybe this was a choice, but the gameplay, or the not the gameplay, but the gunplay is leaves a little bit to be desired, especially like coming off of playing Helldivers 2, which is just so solid. And I really don't mean to compare the two. It's just for this game specifically, it feels like the gameplay or the gunplay feels a little clunky, and like I even was backing up from an enemy and got stuck between a wall and like a chair or something that I don't think I was actually supposed to be able to move behind, and I actually had to reload my save after I ended up defeating the enemy. And I'll put that footage in so you can see what I'm talking about. But in terms of games like this where it takes place in a house that you are getting familiar with, but it takes you a while to build up that familiarity, I did find that the map is really easy to read once I realized I could use the directional buttons to pan to the different, or skip up to the different floors, or skip down to the basement or whatever. Once I realized all of that, then kind of navigating got a little bit easier for me. I wish the default like touchpad click, because I am playing this game on PS5. I probably should have said that at the top, but it feels like it should default to the map instead of having to press and hold for the map. Like when you press, it just opens up to clues, which maybe later in the game, as I get further into it and more used to how it functions, that might feel less like a complaint and more like, okay, I see why they did this. Really, I think this game's gameplay is centered around the puzzles and solving it, and the gunplay kind of comes secondary, or the combat comes secondary. And for the most part, I don't mind it, especially when I consider the fact that it's a double A game. They're not trying to make something that is of the highest caliber, but there is like a level of polish that this game has. It just doesn't seem like either those efforts. I guess that's the confusing thing, is that the game is polished in so many ways that for it to not extend to the combat seems like maybe it was a stylistic choice to make it feel a little clunkier. And so I'm willing to kind of give it the benefit of the doubt there. And where that polish really comes through is the audio and visual stuff. The sound design is incredible. The one thing I wish I had done before I started recording was play the game with headphones. But even with my desktop speakers, it feels like the sounds are coming from all over, and there's like chains rattling, or you can hear something moving on the other side of the wall, or little things like seeing like eyes glinting in a dark trash can, and then as you approach it, the eyes go away, and you're like, what? I know it's a visual thing, but like you heard the scurry of whatever it was, and like there's some really cool stuff going on, and like the animations that play out are like kind of high quality for a double A game. Like I feel like this is like a double A and a half game, but it's the presentation of the game is really good. I think some of the like I've seen the actress that plays Emily and then see her face, and I'm like, okay, they don't look like, I know there's like a little uncanny valley thing going on, but there are times where like the facial animations don't seem to be of the highest caliber either. But all's forgiven. For the most part, you're staring at the back of the character's head, and you're really only seeing it in cutscenes, which are really well done. In terms of the frame rate and like performance of the game, I haven't noticed too many frames dropping. Maybe like in some instances where like I threw a Molotov or something like that, and there was a lot of fire happening and like a handful of enemies around, then I would notice like a little bit of like frame rate dips. But really, I'm playing it on performance mode, and it seems pretty consistent. And there's a surprising amount of options in the menus to kind of tweak that. I know like it says if you adjust the FOV or the field of view, it may have an effect on performance. So I actually just left it where it was, but like turned off motion blur. And there's a couple of other things like depth of field and stuff that you could turn off that would probably increase that, or stop some of those frame drops from happening like that. But for the most part, the presentation of this game, even in performance mode, is really solid. And I think that's where this game kind of goes from that, like when it comes to like the voice acting and story and everything like that, that's what kind of bumps it into this like double A 0.5 category for me, where I'm really impressed by it when I consider, they probably had to spend a lot of money to get David Harbour and the other actress whose names I don't know, or whose name I don't know. But for the most part, it seems like a game that was made inexpensively. And I think that is a thing that it might save a lot of these studios. that are making games and spending way too much. Like if they can learn to do more with less and make smaller, less expensive games that are of a quality like this, take my money, because this game is really cool. Like I said before, I've seen the review scores for this game, and personally, I do not agree with them. I think there's a lot of comparison to, like, there's a lot of people talking about how, like, Alone in the Dark, like, kick-started this genre of survival horror, but now it's taking a lot of inspiration from those that came after the original Alone in the Dark. I don't know too much about that, but, like, personally, I would not review a game on that criteria. I would look at the game for what it is and go from there. So, yeah, all of that stuff of, like, being like, well, I thought this game, like, X game was an 8, and this game is not better than that, so it can't be an 8. Or, I thought X game was a 7, and I feel like this is worse than that, so it can't be. It's got to be less than that. That's not how reviews work in my brain. You look at the game for what it is, and you review it based on that. And like I said, while the combat is not the strongest, I'm still enjoying it. It kind of puts me, like, if I kind of role play a little bit and, like, use some, like, ludonarrative dissonance to kind of forgive some stuff, or at least try to look at it like, okay, like, this woman's not fucking Salt, or insert whatever gun-toting action hero. She's just somebody checking up on her uncle. I'm willing to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in that regard. But the story really is this game's strong suit. It's a game that almost like begs me to replay it, just because I have the impression that it's one of those games where, similar to the movie Hereditary, and I'm not about to spoil it, but, like, when you watch Hereditary the first time and then you go back and watch it again, you see how things were right under your nose the entire time. And if you just knew, you would spot it. You could put your finger on it so much earlier. I feel like this is going to be a game that feels like that and will be cool to replay, even through the perspective of Edward, and see if I can still see that through line once I have the answers. But the house, Derceto, really messes with my head. It's really disconcerting how I can approach a door and go to push on it, and then immediately the entire room changes and there are enemies behind me or trapped in the room with me. That is really cool, and and seeing where things go beyond beyond the fabric of what you would consider to be reality is really cool. And I'm enjoying that quite a bit. When I finish the game, I'll come back with my final thoughts. This is really just my impressions after playing it for 4 hours. So if you're interested in that and seeing how all of this comes out or like washes out for me, definitely subscribe to the channel. I'm going to start trying to make videos again. Definitely a little bit more laid back. I know my videos used to be, I used to spend like a week and a half playing and beating a game, then writing a script, editing the narration, then putting it all into a video and editing all of that. And I was just burning out, and that's kind of why it took, over a year off. I really needed to recharge my batteries, and, I got engaged since I last made a video, and being able to focus on life a little bit helped a lot. And, I'm approaching this from a completely different mindset. So I hope y'all that subscribe and maybe check this out, if you subscribed to me previously, are along for the ride with me. I really appreciate you tuning in. Outside of that, I recently started a podcast called Save Scummers, which is available on Apple, Spotify, I think Google, even though Google Podcast is going away, and it's also on YouTube. Again, the name is Save Scummers. I recorded with my buddy who we work together, but we often get in trouble for talking about video games at work. And so eventually we were like, we need to have these conversations because we have a good time having them. And so we need to do something with that. And I had all the podcasting equipment. So I was like, you want to start a podcast? And so we did that. And so we've got 2 episodes out already. It's fairly new. So yeah, it's just a weekly gaming conversation. So if you're looking for something like that, check us out. That's Save Scummers. SAVESCUMMERS. Don't forget the S. But yeah, thank you for watching. Lead with love and stay hydrated.